Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Unit 3, and today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the importance of context in the archaeological record. So, we've talked a little bit about context when we talked about the history of archaeology. For hundreds of years, people would take valuable objects and ancient objects out of the ground with no regards for their context or the places in which they were originally found, which can tell us so much about past peoples. As a matter of fact, most of the objects in our modern day museums are objects that are taken out of context, passed down from wealthy patron to wealthy patron, or from looted contexts. In other words, just stolen out of the ground without any regards for the material surrounding it. But we need to focus today on what exactly context is, at least from an archaeological perspective. So context consists of three parts. There's the matrix, which is the soil layer that surrounds an artifact. There's the association, in other words, all of the other artifacts within the same matrix, all the artifacts that are found with that artifact. And then finally, there's the artifact's provenience, which is its position in 3 dimensions within the matrix. So let's illustrate what I mean with regards to an archaeological dig. So let's say you're digging down, and this is your bulk or the sidewall of your excavation, and you find an artifact, a projectile point, right here where this blue triangle is. Well, its context consists of the matrix, or the soil layer around the artifact, outlined in red here, all the other artifacts surrounding that artifact, and as for provenience, this is why we use the Wheeler-Kenyon or box grid method. Not only can we pinpoint exactly the square where an object came from, in this case square 3B, but by measuring from the corners of that square and downward from the top of the square, we can mark its exact location. So what does this mean within the broader site itself? Well, let's take a look at this example of a section drawing or bulk. You know, if you're doing the side of an excavation, let's say in England, and you're going down, you might look at the side of your excavation and see something like this. Well, by knowing the context of objects, we can figure out what goes together. So for example, we can tell that the Roman road was built, but a road ditch was made for draining the road. We can tell that there was a house or a building of some kind at the edge of that road because we have a wall and we have a Roman floor. And we know that this was all built at the same time because a level of soil was put in underneath it to level it out so everything can be built. The other reason why context is important is knowing what's above and below certain features. So for example, with this blue line looking at the Roman road and the Roman floor, we know that if this Roman floor or Roman road is unbroken, we know that everything found below it dates from before the road and the floor were built. If an object were taken out of the ground without its context, we don't know exactly when or where it came from. Now, I'd like to talk also a little bit about the idea of association. That is, all the other artifacts that are found around it. And that idea of that floor I was telling you about, that Roman road and floor, that's the idea of what we call a closed association. That is to say, objects are found in a sealed context. We know everything under that floor dates to before the floor was built, right? And so the association between those artifacts is a definite thing. Another example of this closed association or sealed context might be a sealed tomb. This is the reason why the famous King Tut's tomb, or the tomb of Tutankhamun, was so incredibly valuable because it had never been opened. You know that everything on the inside dates from the same period and goes together and thus can tell us a lot more about the person that was buried there than we ordinarily otherwise be able to do. Open associations are when there are open soil layers between, and there are open soil layers because anything can affect these associations. Soil layers change, artifacts sink in the soil. Think about the frost heaves and the potholes that you get in the wintertime as the water within soils freezes and expands and then melts and contracts again. Soil layers are permeable barriers, so things can move between them. Additionally, you can have what's referred to as a formation process or a C or N transform. So what do I mean by this? Well, artifacts that are found in context are part of what we call original human behavior. This means that you get the stuff to make the artifact, you manufacture the artifact, you use it, and then you throw it away. Formation processes are what happen to that context after it's been buried. And these can be C transforms, or cultural formation processes, or N transforms, or natural formation processes. If there's an earthquake and it knocks something over and messes up the stratigraphy, that's an N transform. If there's a lot of flooding or erosion that moves soil layers, that's also an N transform. But C transforms are caused by people. So let's say that a farmer comes through and plows up the soil so that he can plant crops, churning up all the soil and taking the artifacts out of context. Or a curious individual picks up a projectile point that they found in the woods instead of leaving it where it is. I'm looking at you. Those would be examples of C transforms. So yet another reason that if you find an artifact in the wild, leave it alone and notify the authorities. So there we've talked about contexts. So what we're going to do next is we're going to talk about certain contexts that are very good for preserving perishable remains.